That's a great Appalachian kind of singing, isn't it? We could do more of that, couldn't we? Yeah, wonderful. Well, brothers and sisters, I welcome you to this next episode in the Gospel of Luke, episode 11, the next to the last episode of our survey of Luke. And you'll notice that your reading was from chapter 21, verse 5 through chapter 23. And if you want to go ahead and turn there to chapter 21, verse 5, we are going to enter into a passage of Scripture that has confused so many people through so many years, and we do not any longer want to be confused. We want to know what we know that we know. And the Lord has not given us every single thing in minute detail that's going to happen, but He's given us just enough that we need to know to worship Him and to know what's going to happen on the end times. So let's venture into this. You'll recognize that we have been going through all of this verification by Luke in his book, and we've had all the teaching of Jesus, and we had the line in the sand. Are you going to be on one side of the line? You're going to be on the other side of the line. And so we've gone through all of these episodes of Jesus' teaching, and I think we've decided what side of the line we want to be on. But then in between all of that teaching and the week of the Passion, the week where Jesus is going to go to the cross, we have these little stories. Now, we skipped over these stories in Luke because they were in Matthew, and we went through Matthew, and several of them were also in Mark. And so we've got what has happened since the last teaching that Jesus gave last week. We've got the triumphal entry into Jerusalem that most of you will remember. We went through in Matthew. We've got Jesus turning over the tables in the temple of the money changers, and we've gone through that, and being accused of being a very rogue rabbi by the Pharisees and scribes. And then at the very beginning of this chapter that we're studying today, you've got these 4 verses at the very beginning where we talk again about the widow and giving her offering at the temple. And that's where Jesus is. He's at the temple when we begin our reading today of what we're going to read. But before we begin reading that, I want to just give you a little bit of an introduction, a few slides of introduction to let you know why this is so important to us, to recount this and to know this. The secular belief is more complex than this, but if you wanted to boil it down to its very basics, secular belief is that time and life are circular. Every so many thousands of years, everything recycles. You know, you have your reincarnation that happens in many religions. You have the earth regenerating in thousands, and some people say millions of years ago. And then they also believe we come from nowhere and we're going nowhere. Right? We came from the primordial soup, and we gradually evolved and came out on land. And then where are we going, and what is the meaning of all this? Oh, we don't know. It's all over the place. The meaning is fight global warming. The meaning is be good to your mother. The meaning is all of these different things, even though you should be good to your mother. I don't want to let you get the wrong idea. It's good to be good to your mother. But we come from nowhere and we're going nowhere. Well, the Christian belief is different than that, as you all know. The Christian belief is that time and life are linear and progressing. We come from God, and He is taking us somewhere. So Jesus teaches that we are here for a reason, that we're going somewhere. It matters that we know that fact. And Jesus gives us a glimpse into the global future. Now, I say a glimpse into the global future because if you take the New Testament as a whole, with some good references from the Old Testament, you can get into a lot more minutia than we're going to get into today. We're going to just try our best to follow what Jesus taught in these chapters of Luke and not get too far into the minutia that we might get into if we go back to Ezekiel and Zechariah and some more of the Old Testament prophecies. And if we got into the book of Revelation, one of these days we're going to study the book of Revelation together. And that'll be quite fun for me, and we will get into all of those things. But today, I'm going to take you on a survey of the end times, which should be interesting all on its own. If you'll remember, Luke is talking to Theophilus, and Theophilus is interested in this because this is the reckoning. A judge is always interested in the reckoning. What is the judgment going to be? And he would be very interested in this that Jesus is teaching here. And also, we should be very interested in what Jesus is teaching here. So, let's read Luke 21, 5 through 23. If you'll reference your Bibles, I will read this narrative. Some of his disciples were remarking about how the temple was adorned with beautiful stones and with gifts dedicated to God. But Jesus said, "As for what you see here, the time will come when not one stone will be left on another. Every one of them will be thrown down." What? Every one of them will be thrown down? "Teacher," they asked, "when will these things happen, and what will be the sign that they're about to take place?" He replied, "Watch out that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name, claiming I am He. And the time is near. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and revolutions, do not be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. But before all of this, they will lay hands on you and persecute you. They will deliver you to synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors, and all on account of my name. This will result in your being witnesses to them. But make up your mind not to worry beforehand how you will defend yourselves, for I will give you words and wisdom, and none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death. All men will hate you because of me, but not a hair of your head will perish. By standing firm, you will gain life." In the last few verses, he says, "When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those in the city get out, and let those in the country not enter the city. For this is the time of punishment in fulfillment of all that has been written. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. There will be great distress in the land and wrath against this people." Wow. Now remember, we who are Christians in this day and age with our own Bibles have been able to read these verses and have been preached to from these verses probably many times. But this was a first. This was Jesus' debut of what's going to happen at the end times. And he gives such great encouragement. He says, but don't worry. All of these bad things are going to happen. because they have to happen. God has ordained it. But I'm going to give you the right things to say and the right things to do and the right things to be. So don't worry, because you are my disciples, my followers. Well, we know that in AD 70, Rome came and asserted its authority, and there was such a great conflagration. We could talk for probably this entire message about all the things that happened there. Maybe 3 or 4 messages about all of the things that happened between AD 66 and 70 as Jesus prophesying came through and the armies came around Jerusalem. By that time, all of the Christian believers had taken this to heart, and they were either in Petra over in Jordan or up near Antioch. They had gone away from Jerusalem. And Rome came in AD 70, and finally, they're not quite sure who started the fire. Some scholars believe that as the Romans got near the temple and were threatening to overrun it from the fortress Antonia that they had come through, and that they started the fire in the temple. Some believe that as they got near to the temple, the Jews themselves, the zealots, started the fire to keep the Romans out and to not give the Romans anything to take away. And so what happened was this great fiery catastrophe happened. Let me give you just a little bit more of an interesting thought about the temple that you may have not heard before. Josephus tells us in some detail, and I picked out just a few of those details, that there were 4 pillars of solid white marble, stone, and each one of them, they were 1 stone each, and they were of marble, and they were 40 feet tall. He says the entire front surface was covered with gold plates that 1/2 inch thick. So when the sun came up in the east, it shimmered with gold. You don't often see the temple like I've had to kind of place it in there, but that is what it really looked like, with the gold on the tops of the columns and on the top of the temple as well. And you can't see it from this viewpoint, but up underneath the porch of the temple was a grapevine running under the crown of the building, and it was of solid gold with grape clusters the height of a man. Solid gold with grape clusters the size of a man. It was something to behold. Now, how is that and why is that important to us? Well, when the Romans came in, whoever started the fire, it was a great fire because there was a lot of wood there as well inside the temple and in the storage rooms and areas surrounding the temple, and it all burned very hot. And it melted all of this gold down so that it went into all the crevices between the stones. And it went as a melted, kind of like a hot glaze goes down over a cake that you might bake. And it just melted down through there. Well, how are the Romans going to get their booty out of there with it having been melted like that? Well, they sent crews of mercenaries in through there, and they banged all of that off of all of those surfaces, and in order to do it, they had to knock every stone down off the other one to get the gold that had seeped into the crevices in between. There wasn't mortar in between there. It was heavy stones stacked upon one another. So that gold, as it melted down in there. They wanted to get all of it for their Roman masters, so they had to knock every stone down from one another. And that's what happened. I've got here a picture of the Wailing Wall. I don't know how many of you all have had a chance to go to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. I had a chance to do that several times when I was younger. And this is the Wailing Wall here, and you can see these little men down here praying at the Wailing Wall. That's the western wall that is left. Back here is where the temple would have been, and there was not one stone left on another till they built the Al-Aqsa Mosque there that you see the golden dome of, and it was the Muslims that built that. It was from scratch. So, here's where we're going to start getting into some interesting facts about the end times. Let's look at the next few verses, Luke 21, 24 through 36. And they will fall by the sword and will be taken as prisoners to all the nations. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars on the earth. Nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. Men will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is going on in the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing nigh. He told them this parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees when they sprout leaves. You can see for yourselves and know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening, you know that the kingdom of God is near. I tell you the truth, and this is the important thing for us. I tell you the truth. This generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighted down with dissipation, drunkenness, and anxieties of life, and that day will close on you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all those who live on the face of the earth. Be always on the watch and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man. Whew. Boy, Jesus has given us a lot of information there. It's kind of like, did you ever in school have to do a book report, and like me, you went out and got the Cliff's Notes on it? And you said, oh, I'll just write this down. Well, it doesn't go along well with teachers, but that's what some of us do. And this is what Jesus is doing. He's giving us the Cliff's Notes of the end times. So we're going to have to go back and do some etymology, do some word sleuthing, and find out exactly from the original languages. And forgive my Greek, but you would have to have some Greek going on here. But let's understand what we've got going here. The times of the Gentiles. He says until all of this stuff's going to go on until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And so when does that happen? Well, let's go back to our example for the generational reckoning. This is in AD 30 that Jesus is saying this, plus 40 years is a biblical generation, right? We know that from our reading. That comes to AD 70. And guess what happened in AD 70? Not one stone was left upon another. So this is, remember, both ends. We're talking about both ends. The end of Israel as a nation at that time, and the end of the world as we know it at the end times. So we're talking about two ends here. Okay? This is going to come a lot clearer to you. I can tell your faces are going, okay, whatever you say. But I'm going to help you. Our first sleuthing comes into play when we see that there are two Aramaic-rooted Greek words that are not clearly translated. And we have to give our translators a little grace and say, okay, they were Greek wordsmiths. And so since they were Greek wordsmiths, a lot of them didn't really know a lot about the Aramaic root system. So here's where they had a little bit of a problem. It's not wrong in your Bible. It's just not as clear as we'd like for it to be. So let's go back to that. Between verse 24 and 25, there, if you look at between verse 24 and 25, it says, Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Break. There will be signs in the sun. Okay, so there's that. There will be signs. The Greek there is, with the Aramaic root, is kai esontai. And it means literally, and will happen. Okay? And will happen. And this and, the chi here, usually is not capitalized. But the emphasis is a capital because it's connecting those two together. Let me explain a little bit. This chi is a coordinating conjunction, and the esontai is a verb imperative future acting as an adverb to express modified time. So there's your Greek lesson right there. What it really means is, right there between verse 24 and 25, it means, and at that time will happen this. Okay? Now, at what time will happen this? When all the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. That's what that really means from our scripture in the original languages. And it's almost like a person telling a story. You know when you tell a story to children, you want to just get your eyes real big and you want to get real farther out over your chest and say, and at that time will happen this. And you got them, right? That's what Jesus is doing. And at that time, after the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, will happen this. And then he's talking about all those things. Signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth, nations will be in anguish. And all of those things. So, we put that together. Verse 32. Let's go down to verse 32 right quick. I tell you the truth. This generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. So, at that time will happen this, at that time of this generation, and that generation, 40 years, will not pass away until all of these things have happened. Just like it did with Jerusalem at that end, that generation did not pass away. And so, we're about to build a little logical column here. You don't have to remember all of this. We're videoing this. You can look at it anytime at your leisure. But just try and go with the flow and follow me. The end in Luke 21, 25 through 31 is the same end that's in Revelation 6, 12 through 14. And we're not going to get into Revelation and read that right now. But Jesus is saying the same thing that's there. And you'll notice, if you go through there in Revelation later, it's the same kinds of things that are happening in a list almost in the exact same order. It's when the sixth seal is opened in Revelation 6, 12 through 14. The signs, the sun, the moon, the stars, earthquakes, like figs falling, and the sky rolled open. And it's interesting here, if you want to look back at verse 26 of 21. Men will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Well, that word shaken right there is the Greek word for will be dislodged out of place. The skies will be dislodged out of place. Not just shaken, dislodged. So, the kingdom come is what we're talking about. At AD 30, Jesus ascended, the church age begins. That's the age of the Gentiles. Why? Because we're supposed to be witnesses to all the world that the Israelites wouldn't do. We've talked about that through Matthew, Mark, and Luke, right? So, you have 2,000 years of Gentile grace times fulfilled at the rapture. And we're going to talk about the rapture a little bit in a minute. Why do I say 2,000 years? Very interesting. Good question. I'm glad you asked. 2,000 years. Because you remember when Peter's talking about these kinds of things, he says, well, and as you know, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. Well, a lot of people have allegorized that, but Peter was saying the right thing. Peter was saying, hey, with God, you watch. The day of the Lord is going to be 1,000 years. The day of God is going to be 1,000 years, but the day of the Gentiles is going to be 2,000 years, because God is a loving God. He wants to give double the time for the Gentiles to witness to the earth. And we've been doing that, have we not? Okay, so now you're going to have this 2,000 years of Gentile grace times fulfilled at the rapture, plus the 7 years of tribulation, which would be 2037. And then Jesus breaks in there and he says, let me tell you a little parable about the fig tree. You think, wait a minute, you're talking about all this gargantuan stuff, and you're now going to stop and talk to us about a fig tree? Yes, I am, he says. He says, learn the lesson of the fig tree. There are two leafings. How many of you have fig trees? Okay, so you're going to notice this, or you have already noticed this. When a fig tree begins to mature, they have leaves because the tree needs leaves to bring in that photosynthesis and help the tree to grow. But then, with these smaller leaves all over, they begin to make the figs. And as they make the figs, and as the figs get more and more ripe, they're out from under any kind of covering for the figs to be under. And the fig tree comes over and it makes another leafing, larger leaves, and they come over the top of the figs so that they'll have some shade and be able to mature and make big, beautiful, nice figs. And so that's what Jesus is saying. Hey, just like a fig tree has two leafings, we're going to have 2,000 years of being able to do all these things that he said that we would do, that the Gentiles would do until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, and then the end would come. So, now right here, I have to stop and do transparency in advertising. For me, this is informed supposition. This is not detailed in the Bible, so we want to be careful about that. To say something that's detailed that's not detailed is not good. Our Father doesn't like that. But we're trying to get to these things happening, so the informed supposition is, if you look at it, Jesus is saying, hey, there are two leafings that always happens. That's the lesson from the fig tree that you don't get anywhere else. In the Old Testament, there were two sides of the tabernacle, which represented Christ's body, expressing all the witness revealing of God. We won't go through that. That's another lesson from another day, but take my word for it. It represents Christ's body, the two sides of the tabernacle, encasing all that's in there that's symbolic of Christ's body witnessing to him coming. When Jesus sent out the disciples to witness, he sent them 2 by 2, right? 2 is very important. And then on the road to Emmaus, how many witnesses did you have that not only saw Christ resurrected, but went back and told the apostles about it? 2. And then you're going to have 2 witnesses of revelation that are going to extol the fact that Jesus Christ, the sovereign Lord, is coming back to Jerusalem and coming soon. And the Antichrist doesn't like that one little bit. And these are just a few of these, 2, 2, 2, and you get into the Pauline epistles and you get into some of the writings of Peter, and you find that whenever there's witnessing to be written about, to be commissioned, to be done, it's always 2. Now, let's go into some of that. We're talking about The Gentile grace times fulfilled at the rapture. 1 Corinthians 15:51. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. And then in Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians, he writes, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. That is rapture, what we call the rapture. That moment in time. Tyndale, when he translated it, he was the first one to translate it into English, and he labored over it, and he said, how can I do this? How can I explain this? Oh, I'll say in the blink of an eye. And then he said, no, it's quicker than that. In the twinkling of an eye. You remember that from your King James? In the twinkling of an eye, the rapture is going to happen. So, in 2 Thessalonians, right after this, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, and we won't read all the way through that, but Paul talks about the end times. He talks about the gathering, then the bema judgment, and then the glorious appearing. And so there are two different things. A lot of people say, no, there's not going to be a rapture. There's just going to be the second coming. And there are all kinds of speculations about that. But if you actually read the Bible, you will read it and you will notice how these are two separate things. There's the gathering of the saints, we call a rapture, and there's then the glorious appearing of the Lord and Savior at His second coming. They're two separate events separated by 7 years of tribulation on the earth. And so, if you'll pardon me one more time, I'm going to go to the Greek. In this passage of Scripture, 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 12, there's verse 3 there. Verse 3 says, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs first. And right after that it says, for the lawless one will have taken over. And he explains a little bit about the lawless one. Well, when the translators who are Greek specialists got to this point, they said, okay, you're talking about the lawless one, the Antichrist, at the very end here. And so it must mean that this word in Greek, apostasia, means rebellion. Well, it doesn't. Right there, when you look at the original Greek, it doesn't mean rebellion, it means departure. In the New Testament, this word is used 15 times, and 11 times it means departure or rapture. And as we know, a word can be a word in Greek, but it can mean, in the context of what you're talking about and in the tenses they're using, can mean different things. The Greeks were very particular. And here, in our oldest Greek manuscripts, it says, until the apostasia occurs first. And this word occurs is elthi in Greek, which means going comes. Those Greeks. That's why it's all Greek to us. So the going comes. So let me put it all together in a sentence. For that day will not come until the departure going comes first. The departure going comes first. The departure going comes first. What's the departure going? Rapture. The gathering of the saints. And then those other things will happen. Is it making sense for you now? Okay. Let's get another witness, a second witness, where Paul is writing to Titus. Now, he wrote 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians as the first letters he wrote. He wrote Titus as the next to the last letter he wrote. And he's writing to the preacher Titus, who has now become the preacher in the Mediterranean. And he says in Titus 2:13 that there will be the blessed hope and the glorious appearing. And a lot of people say, oh, well, the preterists particularly will say the blessing, the blessed hope and the glorious appearing are the same. No, they're two different things. Because in the Greek it says the blessed hope and even the glorious appearing will happen. You see what you can do? Greek is really as handy as a pocket on a shirt. You know, you can really get some clarity if you just pay attention. So, they're two different things. The blessed hope is the rapture, so that we don't have to go through the tribulation. And a lot of people have trouble with that. They just want us to go through some tribulation. We just got to go through some tribulation because we're sinners. No, we're saints. And we're not going to go through any of that 7-year tribulation. Some people have trouble with that. I'm okay with that. We can agree to disagree. But the Bible says that it's two different things and that we're going to go at the rapture. And then later on, it says in Revelation that Jesus will come back. You see the white horse, and he comes back with his saints. Well, are some of us going to be down here looking up going, I guess I wasn't a first-class saint. All them others are coming with him, and I'm still down here in the tribulation. No. In order for him to come back with his saints, he has to have his saints with him in heaven to come back. Right? So, am I preaching yet? All right. So, you're saying, get to the point, preacher, get to the point. So, the second coming of Christ is the glorious appearing. So we have 2 days of grace that we've gone through that, 2,000 years of grace. Then we have the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is the millennium, 1,000 years. And 2 Peter 3:8 tells us that. And then 2 Peter goes on in 3:12 and says, and the day of God will last into eternity. And so we've got these days, day, and we can match them up with the right words and understand that as a day is as 1,000 years. So, what we've come down to with this 30 plus 2,000 plus 7 years of tribulation is 2,037. We've come through the millennium now, and we've got to 3,037 years. Now, if you do a back tally, the Gentile age is over, so you minus the 1,000 millennium, get back to 237, then minus the years of tribulation, you're back to 2030. Now, plus this generation shall not pass away, that's 40 years. Now, everybody says, okay, you're about to get in real trouble here, Pastor Michael, because you're going to say a date, and you know that it will come like a thief in the night. We're not supposed to know about that. Okay, we're both right. Aren't we smart to both be right? We're both right because we have 40 years in there where we're not going to really know the date. That generation, he said, this generation shall not pass away till all these things be fulfilled. We've got some time in there where we just don't know because God didn't want us to know. He wants us to make an informed choice to be with Him, and those who don't will have missed their chance. So 2 Peter 3:10 also tells us about this generation shall not pass away. So we're talking about the second end now. We have the number 7, which represents spiritual perfection, times 10, man's responsibility. Number 10 is man's responsibility number. I got 10 fingers, I got 10 toes, I got all of this to do the hands work for the kingdom. There was a sign in 1948 that happened. What do you think that was? Israel was witnessed to as a country again, coming back together. What happened in 2017? Under President Donald Trump, they recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The first time that had happened since they were a country. And why is it important that America did that? America is the second witness. So the old witness, Israel, was recognized by the new witness, America, exactly 70 years after they became a country. That's important. Now, let's finish this out. I'm going to give you a timeline. Okay, a timeline. And we're almost done here. So, timeline. We have Genesis 1 through 11, which scholars say was about 4,000 years before Christ. And age of Israel before Christ, about 1970 when Abraham was called, to AD 30 when Christ has had his life and then he has his ascension. He is crucified and has been resurrected and ascended, all in this year of 30. So we bring the year 30 over here as a time that everything changed and the hinge moment of world history, and you have 2030. And what we're looking at is 2030 to 2070. Somewhere in that time period is this generation that all will be fulfilled. Your job is done. And then you have the tribulation, second coming, millennium, great white throne. Day of the Lord, day of God. And I just put this in here because it's important for some people. The temple area cleansing for 30 days will happen. The judgment of the nations will happen 45 days. And that's for us guys that like the minutia from books of Daniel and Ezekiel. So, when you get to the day of God, the final third destruction of the old earth and the new earth, cleansed atmospheric heaven and the earth with no seas but rivers. See the book of Revelation for that last couple of chapters. So, now this once again is informed supposition. I'll give you that. I want to get that right out there. Informed supposition. We had a 70 sign just like Jesus gave the people back when he was talking to them at the beginning of this discourse. We've got a 70 sign, 40 years from the final witness recognition, America, till the fact that that generation will probably be over. That is the year 2057. But we have a little bit of leeway in there. 2057 to 2070, that's only a few years, 13, 14 years, right? That we have. But no one knows the exact day or time. It could be 2031. It could be that's pretty soon. And many of us, probably not me, but some of us that are sitting here might be still alive in 2027 when that 70 sign kind of zeroes in there. Interesting, no? And if you have a better explanation, you better do a whole pot of coffee because I'm coming over. And I'll listen because you've listened to me so far. So there we have it. So, putting it all together, the bottom line. There's going to be a time when the glorious appearing, the second coming will happen. There's going to be at that time, through the tribulation, Israel is going to make a deal with the devil. And he's going to say, I'm going to let you come back and make your temple again. And they go, wow, this is going to be it. As soon as we finish making our temple, the Messiah is going to come. So what they're going to do is they're going to blow up or knock down that Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, who do you think that's going to make mad? That's going to make a lot of people mad. And they're going to build that tribulation temple right on that very site for 3.5 years. And the rest of it is getting into the book of Revelation, which I said we weren't going to do. But we're living now between the time of decision to a maximum, in my supposition, 2057 to 2070. What does that mean? That means we're in the generation right now that better get our walking shoes on. Get more people into the kingdom as fast as we can honestly do without too much of a guilt trip. I want to just point this out to you. This purple circle right here, when the New Jerusalem comes down after this has been destroyed, there's going to be a new temple with Jesus, and it's going to come down. The dimensions of that temple in Jerusalem are as big as the country of India. Did you ever think about that before? You do those dimensions, and it's going to be as big as the country of India, the New Jerusalem. And so when it comes down, that old stuff's going to be gone, and the new is going to be happening there by that 4 square that is talked about in the Bible. And so, you remember, we're going to talk about this in a few weeks in John 1:51. Nathanael, which we call Bartholomew, comes to be introduced to Jesus. And he says, he had said, "Can anything come good out of Nazareth?" Remember that? Well, he says that, and Jesus says, yeah, something good can come out of Nazareth, but you ain't seen nothing yet. I tell you the truth, you shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. That's when that's going to happen, at the glorious appearing. Angels from heaven are going to ascend on the Son of Man as he has a 75-day interval to restore the earth. And we are going to be there. How about that? That's going to be exciting. So, the bottom line is, in the meantime, while we're waiting for all that to happen, which we will revisit when we get to Revelation, not to worry, give it a few months. In the meantime, I daily choose Jesus' cross. We live in a fallen world. We have to choose Jesus' cross. We have to be willing to sacrifice. We have to be willing to go out of our way. And what if this is true? What if this is true? We're in the last generation. What is your responsibility? To build up bigger barns for your stuff? I'm just asking.